All right, just a disclaimer, we are recording this call for our friends that aren't able to make it.
Request. Request.
One sec, everybody. We are getting ready. We're getting some feedback from somebody. Michelle, can you make Elizabeth a co-host? I don't think I'm able to.
I can, now that I know how.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna give it one more minute. I'm just gonna mute everybody real quick too, so that we avoid any added feedback. We're gonna give it another minute, just make sure we get everybody who's planning to be here. We got some late additions. It's great to see such a good turnout. I'm excited to have you all here. This is excellent. All right, well, we'll jump in it. Elizabeth and Michelle, if you guys can keep an eye on the waiting room. Thanks. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and appreciate you guys coming in on such a late notice. I know we kind of alerted you guys a couple weeks ago of some adjustments that we've been making here at Special Olympics to try to implement something new to better serve you guys as coaches, specifically as it relates to submitting your soccer rosters. So over the years, we've received feedback from you guys about the challenges of completing the entry forms that we provided to you guys around soccer, and we wanted to try to make that process a little bit easier for you all. So we introduced the concept by email, but wanted to invite you all to be part of this meeting to share a little bit about what we were thinking, walk you through it, guide you to the different steps that we've been implementing to try to make that process easier, and then receive any feedback that you guys might have, take your questions, and give you all the tools that you need to be successful ahead of the upcoming entry form deadline for soccer. So essentially what we're trying to accomplish with this is to make the process a little bit more streamlined and align it with our season registration rosters. So those of you who have utilized season registration in the past or are presently utilizing it this season, we're capturing a lot of the information from our athletes and unified partners, provided from them directly around the basic contact information and user information, and adding that directly into your season rosters. That information is yours to utilize as you go through the season. And we are very aware that we are asking a lot of that same information again as we go through the entry form collection process. So what we wanted to do is kind of just merge the two processes together and give you an easy opportunity to just utilize the information that we have, and then just provide us with information that we need from you directly to better inform us and assess your teams, which is the basic information of like individual ratings, your overall team ratings, what competitions you're going to be going to, the stuff that we will utilize inevitably to create our divisions, right? So we're attempting to take off a little bit of that front end workload of capturing all those date of births, all the full names of all your participants, and just have that already prepared for you right away so that you can utilize your rosters and have them ready to go. The other benefit of moving in this direction is we will have up-to-date athlete application and Class A records for you guys to reference on hand going into the season, as we do now, and then also prior to the scratch deadline, so that you can quickly reference where everybody stands with their paperwork on file with us. That way you're not waiting until after we've received the entry forms, put it into our database, and then sent back that the expiration report so that you guys can then share that with your families. You'll have that well in advance of us receiving those entry forms from you guys. So you can have it as a quick reference, be in communication already proactively with your families and let them know about whatever outstanding paperwork they may have on file, so that we're not in that 2-week rush where we're trying to get all the paperwork collected from your participants in advance of a competition, because we know how stressful that is for us. We know how stressful it can be for you guys as well. So trying to eliminate as many of those challenges as we go into it. So I just wanted to give you that overview before we jump into it and show you the how-to. Elizabeth is going to guide you guys through that. Before we move into that phase and do the actual guide and walkthrough of how to complete everything, I do want to introduce you to a new member of our team. Everybody meet Katie Mattel. Katie is our new Denver regional manager. So she's going to be taking over all of the day-to-day operations of the Denver region, much that I used to. I've handed off the baton, and she's going to be taking the region in full steam ahead. So I want to introduce you to Katie, especially those of you from the Denver region who are here. Katie, say hello.
Hi guys, I know a few of my coaches are on this call, so I know we have a few meetings scheduled, but I'm looking forward to working with you guys.
Awesome. All right. So let's jump in it. I'm gonna hand it over to Elizabeth, who's gonna guide you through all the steps of what we're talking about with these rosters, how to complete it, and then we're going to talk about the tools that we have available for you guys to guide you through it as well. So Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. All right.
Actually, one more thing as you're pulling that up.
Sure.
As we go along, feel free to ask your questions. Like, we're happy to address them as we go along. Throw them out there. If something doesn't make sense for you, we're happy to clarify it in the moment. Eleni, I am the Senior Director of Regional Services. I should have mentioned that. So I'm leading the team of regional managers. So I'm not leaving Special Olympics. I'm still here. I'm still going to be present and around and see me all the time, but just transitioning into a new role. So, okay. Elizabeth, now the floor.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go through the how-to document that we sent out with the introduction email to this new format, and just kind of flip back and forth between this document and an example of one of my Northeast team rosters, because I saw that they had already done it and it was an easy example in real time to use. So you're going to access your shared roster via the link provided by a regional manager. So between myself, Michelle, Adrian/Katie, and Kyle, you should have received a link to your shared roster that you have probably been working out of since the seasonal registration period for the spring season. This directs you to columns F through J to make sure that everything is complete there. So we're talking about first name through date of birth. These are all age group you could probably leave off to save a little bit of time, and we will division our system will tell us how old they are. So if you're trying to save time and do it quickly, you can probably miss this one, but it is helpful just for us to visually be able to see if you have multiple age groups of teams. So just wanted to point that out there. Before I move on to those, I do want to kind of go over the first half of the spreadsheet, where you're not filling these columns in for each of the folks, any of the players or the coaches. This is for SoCo staff. Typically the regional manager will fill this out based on the live information that we have in the system after people submit. So anybody who is listed as an athlete here will have information here. If it looks like this, that means that we don't have anything on file. Sometimes your regional manager will actually type out not on file or need to submit. But if it doesn't have a black date in there, we don't have it on file, or it needs to be renewed, like this example here. Something else to point out, this one is a really great example where you might know this athlete by CJ, but including their full first name and not a nickname is super helpful for us to be able to match up this information with the date of birth and make sure that we're pulling the correct information for paperwork and putting the correct person into the roster in the system. Like I said, athlete unified partner, it's very similar information, identical information that we're asking on the original entry form for soccer. And then really want to emphasize the need for date of birth. Just looking at some of these names, maybe they don't look like there could be multiple Nora Tuckers or Elizabeth Robbins, but if we have multiple or similar names, the way that we distinguish them in our system is confirming by birth date, and that will also help us with age divisions. Adrian, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so just to clarify here on a couple things. So when season registration opens up going into the season, if your participants, your athletes and unified partners are submitting their season registration information through our season registration platform, we are adding them to your rosters with all this information already completed. So it's not on you to provide us with all this information. All we're asking is for you to provide us with this information for participants who weren't originally reflected on your roster, who may not have completed season registration. So it's just those additional folks. We will have the rest of this already completed for those people that went through that process.
Yep. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, I know for a fact that these from here down, the coach added. So only up to this line was based on seasonal registration, and then it's a Parks and Rec team, so they can collect registration in a different way. And so these folks were those that were added as athletes and any of their unified partners. So thank you for pointing that out.
A couple more just things
yeah.
of just additional clarity here. So the black fields in columns D and E. So if it's blacked out, it's because that information isn't applicable to that individual. So for instance, the ones that are blacked out in column D, that's because they're unified partners and don't have an athlete application that's required of them, and vice versa for the other field. We will black out the column for Class A applications when it's an athlete, because an athlete won't need to complete an Class A, if that makes sense. Then also, if anybody has is highlighted in red or has red font, it's because they've expired or we don't have that application on file. I know that Elizabeth covered that already, but for that one that she has noted there, you can see that their athlete application is expired, so it's noted in red.
And we have some kind of background formulas going on in these two columns where if I were to type out a date that's not expired, it'll turn black. So that's why you see all these in red. So if anybody's added, that formula will still apply. So if I type a date, it will automatically make that, just for reference. So like Adrian said, most, if not all of this information from column F through J is going to be provided via these individuals filling out the seasonal registration ahead of the season, or you as the coach adding additional players to the roster that were not reflected through the seasonal registration process. Another thing I want to point out, something that I instructed coaches to do in my region, was if there was someone on the shared roster here that didn't end up attending practice or is not competing, please do not delete them from the roster, because there is data from their submission that we like to have on hand. You can highlight them in a color, you can make their text a different color, or you can move them to the bottom if you want, but it's probably easiest just to do this and leave their competition information blank to indicate that they're not competing this season. So I will go back here. So that goes over the name, age group, role, and date of birth. We went over column D and E is for SoCo staff use. Even if we have communicated a date via email or a different way, we ask that you don't touch these columns, just so we know that we're providing the most up-to-date information there. So moving on from the information that we get from seasonal registration, this is where you start entering information. So locating column U, which includes the competition entry answers. So you're going to scroll over here and you'll see competition entry answers. Will your team attend state? You're going to use this drop down and select yes or no. This team just so happens to not be attending state. Are you missing any key players is the next question. So you're going to put yes or no. This is another question that we have asked on the entry form previously. It helps us with divisioning and, you know, making sure that your team's in the right division. You will select your team level from 1 to 4. And this is just a reminder that level 1 is the highest level of competition and level 4 is more of the developmental style team play. And then the last thing we're asking is if your team strength from previous years is equal, stronger, or weaker. You can select equal if you're a brand new team and have nothing to compare it to, and we'll just take your level for what it is. But this is really helpful for teams that are returning, just so we can take a look at last year's competitions, see how they all shook out, and if it is the best fit for you to be in the division, or if we might need, as a regional manager or from the sports and competitions team, to reach out to you to see if we might need to switch you around for this year. Any questions from there, just for the competition entry answers that we can answer right now before I move on to the next part? Feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself. And Michelle, I see you have something to add. Go for it.
So a good question was asked in the chat. It says, so a coach has full access to the shared spreadsheet of their team. If something is accidentally deleted or the do not touch columns are touched and our data is overridden, the formulas and all the different things.
Sure.
What happens after that?
Great question.
Let us know. We can help.
Yeah, we do have backup information since we do grab it from a different spreadsheet for seasonal registration. We have the raw data from somebody filling out the form. And we can also go back and look up the application status for either athletes or the partners or coaches there. So we can get the data, but the main thing to emphasize is just not deleting anybody, just, you know, highlighting them or putting them in a different color or just leaving their competition information blank, so that we do have some kind of more central reference per team instead of trying to go back to one big massive spreadsheet of registrations.
I have a quick question.
Sure, Terry.
This is Terry from DDRC. I guess I'm a little confused. When I do the pre-season registration, I
Yep.
send that in to you guys.
Mhm.
You send us back something showing us that maybe there's a few individuals that aren't on our team that would like to be on it.
Sure.
So we
Yep.
contact them. And
Yep.
then last week we got the roster and there's a lot of people on our DDRC roster that we have no clue who they even are.
Yeah.
So what
yeah.
do we, we've already started practices, so it's not like we can go connect with these people this late.
Sure. Yeah. No. And totally get that. So those folks were those people that we had originally placed on the roster based off of the information that you provided. If you haven't connected with them at this point, that's fine. So we'll for all intents and purposes for what we're talking about for your team going into regionals, use the group that you provided to us, the people that are actually attending your practices, and just work within those boundaries. Don't worry about those other ones that have been added to your rosters, unless you see and recognize the name there of somebody who's attending your practices, which I think is unlikely.
Okay, so we would just answer the competing or not competing question, yes or no.
Correct.
Don't
Yeah.
worry about any of those. I didn't know if we were supposed to delete them and,
Leave them on there. Yeah.
Okay,
We'll,
and like, what if
Katie.
okay.
Katie can go into it and then just make some adjustments to your roster so that they're kind of separated out from your team. And then we don't lose the data, but they're not part of the active roster of people that you need to worry about providing all that information for.
So just to confirm, the preseason registration is exactly the same as the rosters now. It's not how it was prior sports. That's all. Okay,
That's
great.
that's what we're looking to accomplish here. Yeah, is
Okay.
aligning the two
Okay.
things. Yeah, to make it a little bit easier for you guys. Mhm.
Okay,
And just to note, this is the pilot, so the next sport that you might coach, we might not do this. So just know that soccer, right now, we're trying it out and we might ease this in to sports as we go through the years.
Yeah, so this is a first crack at it to see how it works with a sport that I think might be a little bit easier to introduce it to. And then for anybody who's having is panicking in the room, we will still accept the entry forms that we've used in the past. So if you're comfortable with that, that's your preferred route. You still want to do the same entry forms that we covered on the preseason coaches call, the ones that are saved on the competitions page, the one that you guys are familiar with. We'll still welcome those, still accept them just as we have in the past, but we want to provide you with this opportunity to use a new tool that might save you a little bit more time. We'll go back into the roster. Also, as Elizabeth goes through this, keep in mind that a lot of the information that, or all the information that she's covering with you guys here is the same information that we're also collecting and requesting from the entry forms. We're just presenting it in a different way. So it's just shared here in a different spot. So back to you, Elizabeth.
Cool. So on the competition entry answers, we give a little rundown of all the things that I just went over, and we provide a screenshot of what it looks like, just so you can kind of reference it while you're filling it out and going through this how-to document. So we'll start with the team play 7v7 piece of it. So on the roster itself, we're going to find, I think it might have gotten shifted a little bit since I edited this, but it's going to be the column that asks if a player is competing or not. So like Terry was asking, this is where you're going to put the yes or no, and you can either leave it blank like this or specifically put no for any of the athletes who may not have attended practice yet, kind of a no call, no show. It was a new placement. It just didn't pan out for whatever reason. Or if there are players on your team that practice with you but just can't make it to the competition this year. So that's where you will indicate that. You're gonna click on this little arrow. When you're in the cell, the arrow should kind of appear as you hover over it, and you'll just click yes or no. If you accidentally do something and you're like, oh, I actually wanted to keep that blank instead of putting no, you can right click and do clear contents, and it'll go back to blank. We don't have that in the how-to document, but that's a little, insider tip to clear the contents and have no response in there. And that goes for any of the boxes that have the little arrow next to it, just for reference. Same with any of, like the ones up there. So you're going to indicate whether a player is competing, yes or no. And then in the next one over, you're going to be communicating their individual rating. So it matches the team rating. So level 1 is the highest level of competition, and the level 4 is more of that developmental style on the team. So you'll see that this team put everyone's individual rating here, and that brought them to a team rating of 4. If you're a newer team or you have a lot of new players on your team, please reach out to your regional manager to see what might be the best fit for you. If you this team has kind of a wide array of skill levels, so we are happy to support you in finding what that best division might be for your team this year. Any questions or anything to add for the competing with the team, yes or no, or the individual rating so far? Pretty straightforward. Okay. So this goes over all of that. One thing that I didn't go over, I guess, was the competition team name. So this one, as an example, everyone's on the same team. But I see a lot of folks on here that might have multiple teams, whether it's different age divisions or same age, but multiple teams in the same division. So this is where you're going to distinguish between which team they're on. So for example, with Joan, for your team, you're going to put Blue Dragons, maybe Blue Dragons 1, Blue Dragons 2, and you will keep them all in the order that's on the roster, but just type in which name it is. We'll go over later in the call how we're going to save these as entry forms to be able to input, and that will kind of come in later. Regional managers will make the spreadsheet look a little bit more data input friendly for our competitions team. So don't worry about making it look pretty. Just make sure that the information that we're requesting and requiring on here is communicated. So you're going to put the competition team name here, leave it blank for anybody who's not competing. And this spreadsheet isn't a good example of anybody who might have separate tabs for their team for different age groups, if that's something that you've requested from your regional manager. So just make sure that you're doing these steps on each of the tabs that you might have for your teams. So you might already have it separated out into 2 different teams for the same age group, or you might have an 8 to 15 tab and a 16 to 21 tab and a 22 and up tab. So just make sure you're clicking on all the tabs and not, forgetting to submit one of your entry forms. Anything to add so far?
Yeah, so just to clarify again on the competition team name. So there's no need for you guys to do any additional sorting or moving people around on your roster or placing them in different groups. As long as you're putting in that column that says competition team name, whatever team that they're going to be a part of, we'll take care of the rest. So all you need to do is just put like a Blue Dragons Youth, Blue Dragons Adult, or Broomfield Adult, Broomfield Youth, Broomfield Green Dragons, whatever they want to call themselves. So we will take that information and then group them accordingly on the competition rosters for the events themselves. Does that make sense?
It would be the same as putting it at the top of a separate entry form for each time. So however you would do that would be the name to differentiate between the different teams.
Yeah, basically we want to eliminate the need for you guys to have to fill out multiple rosters for each one of your respective teams, because we know that can be time consuming too. So all you got to do is just put the team name in these fields and you'll be good to go.
And Susan just made a really good point. I was going to clarify this before I said it. We did increase the roster size. And Susan, if you want to clarify that at all.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, I think that number 12 was floating around back when we were doing 5v5. So with us doing 7v7, we'll increase that roster size to 15 with 2 alternates. I do want to give just a quick reminder on the age groups. The Special Olympics typical age groups are 8 to 11, 12 to 15, 16 to 21, and 22 and up. Depending how many youth teams we have, we sometimes combine, depending, I guess, how many teams we have, we sometimes combine those. But I just want you to keep in mind, if you're coaching an adult team, any athlete on that team has to be 16 or over, especially in soccer. It's just a safety concern for everyone. We've had it before, and it's not fair to any of the teams. So if you're in that situation and you only have a couple of those guys, reach out to your regional manager and hopefully we can find a better spot for them. But anyone on an adult team, so that means if there's someone that's 22 or older on that team, everyone else on that has to be 16 or older. You guys have any questions on that? Thanks.
I will add that to the guidelines and reminders at the bottom of this how-to as well. Just so it's all in one place as you are referencing.
One other thing to note on that. So when you are providing those ages, we will always take the oldest individual on your roster, and then that's what we use as the determination for their age group. So if you have a team that's 12 to 15 and you have a 35-year-old on your roster too, that team's going to be playing in that 22 plus division. So something to know as you're going through that. That's we will look at just that top number for ages.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include that at the bottom. I just made some notes and we'll resend out this how-to document kind of as questions come up and we clarify some things on here. So reshare my screen. Okay. So team name. So like we said, if your program has multiple teams, that's where you will distinguish that. As another reminder, players can only be on one roster, and this includes athletes and unified partners. So just make sure that they are on one or the other. Team rosters have a maximum of 15 players and 2 alternates. So if you are using the old PDF version of the form, just know that you can extend your roster further. But if you're using the shared roster, obviously, you'll just be able to type in the names and keep track of it that way. We've already provided the reminder to please not delete anyone from the roster, just leave the competition information blank. And if you need to add anybody, you can just add them to the bottom of your roster by simply typing in their name and all the information that is required here, from first name through date of birth, and then the competition information. We talked about indicating your individual player ratings on there. And this is just an example of a fake team with people. This gives a great example of two different teams in one roster. So you'll see Coal Creek Kickers blue and silver. The blue is the 22 and up group, and the silver is the youth group 8 to 15. You see there's one person that's not competing, and I indicated no, but you could just leave that blank. I see some stuff popping up in the chat.
You're good.
Okay, that's about age groups. Got it. Okay. So that covers the 7v7 team play. Individual all-star skills is very, very similar. You're going to do the same thing where you are indicating whether that player is competing in the all-star skills challenge, yes or no. And then you are going to indicate their whether they use a wheelchair or not. And then their entry score. So you're going to use the All-Star Skills Challenge guidelines and playbook to determine what the different scoring looks like. And then you're going to submit their entry score. If you don't quite have an entry score for them, you haven't been able to run through all the drills by the time entry forms are due, you can leave that blank for now and just update it as more practices happen over the next couple of weeks. Or you can give your best guess just based on observing them at practices to make sure that they're in the right division. But individual skills has a little bit more flexibility than the scores and ratings and team ratings for the team play. So that's the all-star skills. They pretty much mirror each other there. An important reminder is that
Nope, sorry, go finish.
players can only compete in team play or individual skills. So they shouldn't have competition information here and over here. If both answers are yes, they're going to need to choose one or the other.
Could you just fill out a couple examples of what it would look like to complete the individual skills for,
Sure.
let's say, Brandon or
Yeah.
Raphael, if he wanted to?
Yeah. So you would say yes, competing in skills. No, they do not use a wheelchair. And then here, let's say that their score is 75. And it's going to put those numbers there.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. I'll delete those before I forget. That's not real. Okay. I can also give an example of just adding somebody. So if I was adding myself, I would be in the 22 to 40-year-old age group. I'd be a unified partner. And then I'm on, let's say I'm doing skills. So skills, you can put the team name if you'd like. I don't know. I don't think we really figured that out, Adrian. Do we want
You
them
can
to
do
put...
Broomfield skills
Okay.
here, right? Yeah.
Oops. And then I'm saying, it's hard because you can't see the headers, but I'm answering these 3 questions. So yes, I'm competing in skills. No, I do not use a wheelchair. And my score was 70. So that will enter me into skills.
Yeah. We got a question in the chat from Elanit. So Elanit, yeah, it does say 22 to 40. We are hoping to at one point introduce a master's division of 40 plus. So that's why there's that cutoff, but essentially anybody over the age of 22 would be in that same age division for the time being.
Yeah, good question. Okay, going back to the how-to. Again, this is just a screenshot of just focusing on these folks that are in skills, just to make it less busy for reference as you're working through it. Here's some guidelines and reminders. We've already added a couple things to this, so we can add based on any questions. So as a reminder, we increased the roster maximum to 15 players plus 2 alternates for the 7v7 play. Players
To
can only be.
clarify on, sorry to
Sure.
interrupt again, to clarify on alternates, so alternates can only participate in a competition in the event of a person from that 15 individual roster is not able to attend a competition. So if one of those people is absent, then you can add one of the alternates to join. Otherwise, they are basically substitutes who are on the non-playing roster for the competition.
Just a quick note on that, like if you have more than one team, and let's say I'm on team one, I can't then be the alternate on team two. So the alternate is someone that's not on an existing team already, that is just filling that slot in case some of those individuals can't make it. Hopefully with the size of 15, we won't have too many folks in that situation. But I just wanted to have you guys keep that in mind as well. It's 12.
Good clarification.
Does that note cover that, Susan? These two, the alternate notes? Did I type it right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. Good addition. On the same-ish note, players can only be on one team roster, or they can participate in the All-Star Skills. They cannot participate in both. Just added this note as a reminder that age divisions are determined by the oldest player on the team, and for the 22 and up age division, players must be over the age of 16. Another reminder of the multiple tabs. So if you are a team with multiple tabs in your shared roster document, make sure that you're completing the information in all of the tabs. Any questions from here before we move on to how to officially submit your entry forms for the deadline? Good. Cool.
The one other thing I will, before we move into submission, we're going to provide you with a bunch of different tools to help you through this process. So one, we're having this call right now. Two, we have this cheat sheet that will literally walk you through it step by step and answer any questions that you might have as you complete the form. And then three, if you have any questions stemming from there, all of the regional managers are trained to do this. They understand how to utilize the rosters. They can troubleshoot with you. They can do an additional training that's one-on-one with you as well. So if there's any confusion, feel free to ask. We're happy to be present and support you through that. We can invite you to the office and walk you through step by step on how to do it. We can do it together, whatever makes it easier for you guys. So just wanted to let you know that there's a bunch of different ways for you to learn how to complete these forms. We understand that this is a new process.
Yeah, and ultimately, like Adrian said up top on the call, is that this is to remove the duplicated efforts of, grabbing the information from the seasonal shared roster to the entry form. And really it's for you guys to have a smoother time submitting entries and save a little bit of time. So again, we are still accepting those, the original PDF version of those entry forms. It's requiring all the same information. So if you want to still play around with this, but still officially submit it with the old entry form, if that's helpful for you to stay organized, totally fine. But like Adrian said, any regional manager is happy to hop on a quick call. Since it's a shared roster, we can be in the same document as you at the same time and kind of walk you through different things. So, and to reiterate, this is a pilot, like Michelle said. We are figuring out all of the, any missing information, reminders, or parts of the process. So if anything stands out as you're working on it between now and Thursday, please reach out to your regional manager and just say, hey, I noticed that it was missing this, or I'm not sure how to do this and it wasn't in the training document. Please reach out and any of us would be happy to support. So I am going to, you can freeze the top row in the Excel, but with this, with the information up at the top, it kind of compacts it really tight right here. I'll show you what it looks like. It makes it a really tight, oh, that didn't do it. Freeze panes. It kind of condenses it a little bit. So if you want to do that, I'll show you how I did that really quick. So if anybody wants to do it. So when this is collapsed or open in the view tab, you're going to highlight clicking the 7 here or whatever row has these headers, and you're going to go up to freeze panes and freeze the panes. And then as you're filling it out, it'll include all of this.
Alicia
Actually,
should.
I think I'm gonna do it from here.
We could also do
Yeah.
this for you guys, so you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about this. If it's helpful for you, let your regional manager know. We'll happily take care of that for you.
Yeah. And it's easy to do it and undo it if you don't like it. So no worries there. So moving on to how to submit. So when you're finished with your competition entry answers and all of the required information, you are going to kind of do what we do, but backwards. So how we send the link to you to use it, you're basically just going to send it right back to us. So when you're finished, you're going to copy the link to your shared roster and send it to the same place you would send the other version. So I will walk through these steps. You're going to go up to the right-hand corner here where it says share. You're going to click it and you're going to click copy link, and another window is going to pop up just to make sure that you actually want to copy the link. And you're going to click copy. And then you're going to send that information to entries@specialolympicsco.org as well as your regional manager so that both inboxes are alerted that it's in there. Once you send us the link, if we're right on it and we're downloading it immediately, that is your entry. Any edits that you make after we download it we're not going to know about it unless you alert us to it. So after the deadline, any edits that are made in the shared roster, we are not automatically notified that edits have been made. So you'll still have to communicate changes with your regional manager and with the competitions team. So just be aware that just because it's a live document, the entry form is still a static document with the communicating of changes. So you're going to submit it and just, say the same things in an email that you would send with the attachment. You can either Control V or right click and paste into the email message. I'll open an email message to show you what that looks like. It's opening in my other screen. So if I go and paste this by doing Control V, or if I right click and paste with keeping source formatting, it's going to give me the same information. It's giving the link that should look very similar to what your regional manager sends out there. So I walk through each of those. And like I said, once you send the link to us and the entry deadline is passed, we are going to, like we said, we're going to make it we're going to move some things around and make it really easy for our competitions team to enter it into our database. And any edits from there, you can make the edits in the shared roster document. If you want it all to be in one place, that's probably easiest. But you just have to notify your regional manager that edits have been made, and we'll have the same deadlines of, communicate changes by X date. So a reminder, just because it's a live document, that will not translate up to the morning of that competition. We'll still have to handle the changes and everything that way. Any questions about how to officially submit, or Adrian and team, anything to add there?
Got a couple questions in the chat.
Sure.
So first, we can't add anybody to the roster after the deadline. So the deadline's the date when we need to receive everything by, and we can still remove people from the roster, but we won't be able to make any additions. We can make swaps of teams if you need to. Any last minute adjustments can be communicated directly to your regional manager, and we will work with you on those. But if you have any anybody who you think might be attending and be part of your team, throw them on that initial roster. It's easier for us to remove them after the fact than add them after the deadline. So that would be rule of thumb. And then, the second question, yes, just communicate any changes to your regional manager, and they will work with you on those. Okay. I think that was basically the walkthrough. So it was, we went through a lot, and covered, quite a bit in very, very deep detail. I think it's a little bit easier once you've done it once or twice, it becomes really kind of straightforward. But again, if you need any additional support, have any questions, your regional manager is here to help. We'll be happily work with you on that and provide you with any support as you need to get these completed. So feel free to reach out to us and we'll work with you on it. Overall, general sense of the room, how are we feeling? Does it seem like it could be helpful for you guys? Thumbs up? Yeah, thumbs up. All right. Take a couple thumbs up. That's good. Well, we appreciate it, everybody. Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up with the call here now.
I have a quick one. I just put it in the chat. When will you be sending out that, what you just went through? You said you're going to send all that out. When will that be coming out to everybody, since the entries are due, I believe, this week?
Sure. For Denver region, Katie and I will be working on these tomorrow morning, and we'll be sending them out before lunch. So
Okay,
keep an
great.
eye out for this.
Thank you.
And for everybody else in the next couple of days. Other questions? Great. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you coming in. We will also send a recap email following this call with just the cheat sheet again, a link to the recording, and we'll follow up with the links to your rosters as well. If you have anybody who is on your team that was not able to attend today, feel free to send them the link to the recording of the call as well. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions. Susan, was there anything competition related that you wanted to cover?
No, I'm happy to ask or answer any questions that you guys might have. Again, it's 7v7. Athletes have to wear shin guards when they're competing in team play, socks covering those shin guards. For those of you that have athletes and skills, it's not required for them to wear shin guards, but we do recommend it so that they are getting used to that as well. But do you guys have any specific competition related questions?
There was one in the chat about young athletes and skills, maybe some differences, or are they very similar with how the setup's going to be for soccer? All that.
As far as the entry forms go, I'm not sure that it'll look like this. It'll probably be similar to what Mandy and Ashton have done in the past. But the skills themselves will be pretty similar to what we're running the athletes through. Cleats are not required. And no metal cleats. They're not allowed.
They will be playing on grass, so it's encouraged. Be better for traction. We ask that people not wear jeans in competitions. Shorts not have pockets, right, Susan?
It's not as
And-
big of a deal as it is in flag football, but yes.
Right. And no hats during competition play. Cool. All right. So we will upon following the roster deadline, the entry deadline, there's a secondary deadline that will follow shortly thereafter. And that is our scratch paperwork deadline. So that is when all of your participants need to have their up-to-date athlete applications and Class A applications on file and completed with us in full in order to be able to participate at a regional competition. If they don't have those applications completed by that scratch deadline date, we will remove them from your roster and they will not be able to compete. So wanted to note that so that you guys can stay on top of the athlete expiration dates that will be provided to you when we send over those roster links in the next day or two. So if you have anybody who is still listed on that and missing their paperwork or hasn't completed it yet, it's important to follow up with them sooner than later so that they can get those completed. And that date is a week following the entry date. I don't have the date in front of me.
It's
If
May
anybody-
4th.
Thank you.
Something
Yeah.
helpful if you're still kind of figuring out like individual ratings and overall team ratings and you're not quite ready to submit that information, but you have a list of players that aren't already on your shared roster that you want to check on their athlete application status to try and figure out those different rosters if you are splitting between the two. Add all of those names and birthdays in there so your regional manager can check on it while you're working on it between now and then. And then hopefully that will help you kind of determine, you know, where you can place them on different rosters if you have similar skill levels. That's a easy way between now and Thursday to get all that information and give them plenty of more of a heads up about their if they need to update it or not.
Cool. All right. I think we're all set. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming. We will stay on for a few minutes if anybody has any outstanding questions that you would like to ask. But thank you for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at regional competitions here in a couple weeks. Should be a fun time. Thanks, everybody.